In today's explainer, we're digging into something that really affects every single one of us, even if we don't realize it day to day. We're talking about the surprisingly fragile nature of workplace ethics. I mean, we usually just assume that the longer you work in an industry, the wiser and more principled you get, right? Experience builds character. Well, maybe not. An absolutely fascinating academic study out of Vietnam decided to actually put that assumption to the test. And let me tell you, the results might just completely flip everything you thought you knew about professional integrity. So let's just dive right in.
I want to kick things off by putting you right in the hot seat. Just imagine for a second that you are a director at a major bank. You've just found out that the names, the account numbers, the contact info for 200,000 bank card holders have been hacked. So what do? Do you immediately alert the customers, or do you delay, effectively covering it up for a little while just to protect your institution's immediate reputation? And look, this isn't some Hollywood movie plot. This is actually vignette number 7, pulled straight from the study we're unpacking today. Seriously, what would you do?
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, but it's just a hypothetical scenario. But as the researchers of this study are quick to point out, irresponsible lending, a total lack of transparency, and massive ethical failures, that's exactly what brought down banks during the catastrophic 2008 global financial crash. So this beautifully illustrates why this topic is just so incredibly critical. We are not just talking about abstract philosophy here, we're talking about those daily, micro decisions made by financial professionals that can literally bring the global economy to its knees.
So how do we actually figure out how these ethical decisions get made in the real world? Well, researchers decided to set up the ultimate face-off. They gathered 90 participants over in Vietnam. In one corner, Group A, 45 seasoned banking professionals, all with more than 5 years of gritty, real-world experience under their belts. In the other corner, Group B, 45 final-year banking students, the rookies, the fresh faces just getting ready to enter the industry. It's basically experience versus youth. Who do you think has the stronger moral compass?
To test this, the researchers obviously couldn't just walk up and ask, "Hey, are you an ethical person?" Because, let's face it, we're all going to say yes to that. Instead, they used a methodology built around 8 highly realistic vignettes. These tested dilemmas involving third-party interests, self-interest, and the institution's overall interests. They threw incredibly practical, messy, modern workplace situations at these participants just to find out where their true loyalties actually lie when the pressure is turned way up. Let's actually look at another one of these thought experiments, just to give you a feel for what these folks were grappling with. Take vignette 4. Imagine you work in the credit department and you get a much better job offer from a rival bank. Do you quietly copy all the sensitive loan information of your current customers to take with you, just to give yourself a nice little head start at the new gig? It is a classic temptation. The participants had to rate if they approved of the action, if they do it themselves, and whether they thought other people would do it.
Okay, before I reveal who actually won this ethical tug-of-war, we need to understand how the researchers kept score. They took the responses to those 8 vignettes and averaged them into a single score ranging from 1 to 7. But here is the trick, and you've got to remember this. A 1 represents a highly ethical banker, and a 7 represents a highly unethical banker. So think of it kind of like golf. A lower score is the winning score. You want to be as close to a 1 as humanly possible. Keep that in your head as we dive into the data.
All right, here is the big twist. The seasoned professionals came in with an average score of 2.60, but the final year students? They scored at 2.20, and remember, lower is better. So the students actually scored significantly lower, which means they proved to be considerably more ethical than the seasoned veterans. The researchers proved, with actual data, that there's a statistically significant gap between the rookies and the pros. And the rookies? They hold the moral high ground. And this brings us to a really fascinating, though honestly kind of unsettling concept that I like to call the experience penalty. I mean, why did the veterans score worse? The researchers theorized that it basically comes down to the daily grind. As professionals navigate the harsh economic realities of the business world, they're facing these ethical dilemmas constantly. And over time, that repetition, that constant exposure to gray areas and high-stakes pressure, it might actually be eroding their ethical compass. They get used to bending the rules just a little bit, just to survive or to get ahead.
Let's break this down into specific scenarios where the differences were the most dramatic. Look at the late reporting of financial statements. The pros scored a 3.33 compared to the students' 2.27. Or take confidential info, which is basically using insider knowledge to dump stock before bad news goes public. The pros were all the way up at a 3.42, really creeping toward the middle of that 1 to 7 scale, while the students stayed way down at 2.69. The seasoned pros showed some real ethical decay in these highly specific technical areas of their day-to-day jobs.
So obviously, we've got a problem here. The industry itself seems to be wearing down the moral clarity of the people working in it. And that leads us to the second phase of this explainer, addressing a question that philosophers have literally debated for centuries. Can ethics actually be taught? Like, if the workplace is eroding your ethics, can a classroom rebuild them? The researchers didn't just want to point out a flaw and walk away. They wanted to test a real solution.
And here is exactly how they tested it. They took 30 professionals and 30 students and put them through a targeted intervention. Step 1, a pretest using our trusty 8 vignettes to establish a baseline. Step 2, a 3-hour, highly targeted, context-based ethics training program. And we're not talking about boring lectures here. This was interactive exercises, analyzing real banking codes of conduct, debating actual issues. And then Step 3, a post-test 1 week later to see if any of it actually stuck.
Let's check on the professionals first. Their pretest score was 2.45. After 3 full hours of intensive targeted ethics training, they dropped to 2.26. Now, sure, that's a slight budge in the right direction, but the researchers noted that this change wasn't statistically significant. The training barely moved the needle for the veterans, which is wild, right? It just powerfully highlights how incredibly difficult it is to change entrenched, hardwired behavior when someone has been marinating in a corporate culture for years.
But what about the students? Well, let's build the tension a bit here. As we saw earlier, the students were already starting from a much stronger, more ethical baseline. Their pretest score, going right into this 3-hour training session, was a very solid 2.21. So they were already outperforming the professionals. The big question is, with minds that are maybe a little more malleable, a little less jaded by the real world, would the training actually have a meaningful impact on them?
Boom! 1.88. That is the students' post-test score. The targeted training absolutely worked wonders for them. It dropped their score significantly, pushing them firmly, undeniably into the highly ethical zone on our 1 to 7 scale. And the researchers proved that this improvement was totally statistically significant. For the students, this practical, case-based ethics training had an immediate and measurable positive influence on how they make decisions.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is this. Ethics is a muscle, and you've got to train it early. This study brilliantly illustrates that practical ethics training is highly effective. But the timing is literally everything. Academic institutions and corporate onboarding programs have got to implement this kind of rigorous, context-based training before the harsh realities of the corporate world wear the employee down. You have to build that ethical muscle memory while the clay is still soft, so to speak.
Which leaves me with one final question to toss your way. Think about your own workplace, your own profession. If your specific industry took this exact test today using scenarios tailored to what you do every single day, who would win? The bright-eyed rookie fresh out of school, or the seasoned veteran who knows exactly how the machine really works? It's a pretty provocative thought, isn't it?